dialogue. We'll have lots of time at the end for questions, comments, for people online as well. Please start thinking about your question. You can type them in the chat box. So this morning we will discover and explore how we can work better together based on the success and the learning we had in a new cooperative called HULO, Supply Chain Logistic Cooperative. Dialogue. We'll have lots of time at the end for questions, comments, for people online as well. Please start thinking about your question. You can type them in the chat box. So this morning we will discover and explore how we can work better together based on the success and the learning we had in a new cooperative called HULO, Supply Chain Logistic Cooperative. Dialogue. We'll have lots of time at the end for questions, comments, for people online as well. Please start thinking about your.
Let's record it.
All right. So again, for people online, you can type your question in the chat box. Okay. So this morning with us, we have 4 people. I'll start with Maria. She's online. Yes, I put it on the next slide. Maria is online. She's calling from Hamburg. She's a professor of humanitarian logistics and academic director of CORE at the Clean Logistics University in Hamburg. We have with us also Jean-François Riffaut, who is the CEO of ACR France, Action contre la France. We have Carole Bresson, over there, policy officer at the Crisis and Support Center, part of the French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we have Jean-Baptiste Lamarche, the CEO of HULO. That will be our 4 panelists today. And we directly start with an introduction of what is HULO, what are the key ingredients, how it works. So we have the foundation to then start a conversation how we can scale up in the aid sector. So over to you, Jean-Baptiste.
Thank you, Cécile. Thank you all for coming. Very pleased to go for this second session of this morning. So, what is HULO? We thought that we won't take too much time because we will talk about it all along the session, but it is the first humanitarian cooperative connecting actors and pooling resources to optimize logistic and supply chain within the aid sector. And we made a nice, small, very short video. So be very focused. It's lasting for 1.5 minutes. Cécile, you can go. If IT will work. Did you press on?
RLH Corp becomes HULO as of 1st of February 2023, a new brand name which stands for Humanitarian Logistics. HULO is the first humanitarian cooperative that connects many aid actors and pools their resources to optimize logistics and supply chains. We at HULO believe that the humanitarian sector is at a turning point in how it manages its resources. We must change our ways of working and innovate together for a long-term impact. HULO has a new professional image that reflects our values and vision. We are an international brand embedded in the local economies that offer international and local services to its members and to all non-members. Like strings twisted together make a solid rope, HULO believes that together we are stronger. HULO provides a framework and a structured approach to synergize supply chains with the benefits of cost savings, secured procurement, faster response, carbon footprint reduction, increased quality, and a unique access to vast resources for smaller organizations. Contact us if you want to know more, participate in our joint initiatives, become a partner or a member.
So, short presentation, straight to the point. Maybe just to complement that is that we are we've been initially 9 founding members. We are now at the board, but we have over 37 organizations participating into the different activities of HULO. What that they could be in some joint procurement, joint HR, joint transport, joint environmental initiatives, but also through the EU humanitarian air bridge, where we still implement activities. So we are supported by the French government, by the DG ECO, by BHA. We also had a direct fund from Planning Innovation funds. We are a startup. We this since 18 months or so, almost 2 years. There are over 30% full-time working. We will be 50 at the end of this year. It's a scaling up operation, a collective operation. And so what we wanted to, it's a beginning of a real success. We could measure the impact and see the value creation in terms of cost saving, but not only, as it was shown in the video, in terms of quality, carbon footprint, and all of this is to increase the impact of aid. And we thought that it would be interesting to share our experience to see how it could be replicated in other sectors, not only in logistics, and that's the aim of this session. So I worked out a few key ingredients that make the success of these initiatives. The first point is that it's really different interconnected actions that we're making together the success of Hulot. So I will take a different aspect, and we will see at the end that this is the way Hulot was created and is working. Sorry. So maybe the first one is back in 2014. We were 9 logistic directors to share the same. With the same organization, more or less, working in the same countries, with the same type of programs, same type of fundings, and this is where we've been a bit of like-minded group of actors, at least in the beginning, because now it's much more expanded. But just to say that by sharing our problems, and so that was the beginning of the story. Sharing a vision on the problem to solve, sharing the motivation to find solution together. That was really the beginning of the story. And the story starts with the funding gap. And the fact that all organizations are doing a lot of effort to look for more funding, and that we as logisticians thought that we could maybe better use the existing funding in order as a leverage to better cover the funding gap. And that's really the beginning. And the first official sharing of our thoughts was at the World Humanitarian Summit, and really linked to the Grand Bargain. What would be the new ways of working, and how we can increase the impact of aid with the existing resources. So that's the first stream of connecting together and starting to work to look at solution together. And what we did is that we did a lot of studies, investigations to see where we could create value. Either by changing the type of funding, working more on preparedness, and having a positive impact on the response, or how can we work better together? And this we've been working with academic groups, such as with Maria from the KLU, and all the group with CORD and so on, and we could identify with evidence together that we can create value by working together. And this momentum, we've been convincing each other to do it. Then the next step was to work together. because we know that if we want to change things deeply, if we want to change the ways of working, like in for the long term, it has to be really structured. It's not an ad hoc project. It's really we commit to each other to work together and to get organized, and we become accountable to each other because we are creating interdependency. And so we've built. I'm not going into the detail of this chart. This is the governance of Hulot with the different committees, and each committee has a real role and has identified participants, and everyone is working together on it, and every committee is connecting to each other from the global vision of what we want to change up to the ongoing operations that are in the field, and back and forth, and we connect all the actors together. Clear governance rules, clear governance architectures and rules to engage in project together. That's really important. For us, it was the key point. We could see other initiative, we could benchmark other initiative without having such architecture and rules. Engagement is more limited. Yeah. The next one is by working together, we built a common vision of what delivers the alliance, what we want to do together. And so we've been working on a charter of principles, and to do this work, to do this journey, is really to align the vision of the different actors. In the room, we had at the beginning, 9 different organizations with different culture internally, with different ways of working. Even if we are like-minded, we are all we have all our single identity. And so to work together with a clear governance, we need to make sure that we are sharing the same values, the same principles, and so on. And that's what we have done to work on that. It took us some time, but we built our own culture, our alliance culture, and that was very important. And so you can see that there is the first one is the strength in number, but we are also looking at excellence and efficiency. We are really remaining really connected to the humanitarian sectors and values through reliability, accountability, and transparency. That's really important also to make within this fora this extension of values and so on. And then we are looking at sustainable impact, because that's the critical topic of the moment. And we also highlighted the willingness to innovate and to an entrepreneurship. Why? Because we really think that working with new ways of working or developing a new sector, version 2, we have to innovate, and we have to be really entrepreneurs. We want to change it, and so that's we have to test, try and fail, and learn and get into that dynamics. The next one is share and consolidate data to better measure impact. That's critical as of today, and it's quite recent, but for ages in the sector, we did not see what was going on really. Working with Excel tables, steering blindly our activities. Today, the world has changed. The digital world is here, and we can, even if it's still a long way to progress, we can already aggregate some data and harmonize them in order to have a better view of what we are doing, what we have been doing, and what might be able to be done in the future. So that's something, and to do that was really critical, because here we are getting at the heart of each organization. Sharing data is very sensitive, but with all what we have done before to settle the right ways, the right structure to collaborate, and with non-disclosure agreements signed by everyone, telling that I'm sharing data, but none of my data will be used without my approval. We created those conditions that we have a trustful environment for evidence-based consolidated analysis. And that's really a game-changing, because now that we aggregate data, then we see together what are the opportunities, what are we buying in the same place and the same items, what could we buy together? That's an example, but that's a really an enabler of new ways of working. And also, sorry, and also the point is that the critical point is measuring the impact of what we do, and so it's also through data and based on this evidence that we will be able to demonstrate that before we were working like this, because our previous data are showing that. Now we are working through the new ways of working. This is the new result, and we can measure the impact, and that's really what we foresee. Another point that is very important is that we have to value the complementarity of actor, whatever the size, and that's really something also that is in deep in our project, in our initiative, and I will take the example of ACF, and it is not because I'm former ACF. The CEO is aside from me, but I think it's a quite important or highlighting example of what has been done. ACF has developed a supply chain management system and invested a lot. And in the long run, in ACF, was that to make sure that it will be sustainable for the long period of time, we have to share it with others in order to share running cost and evolution cost. And we engaged with two voluntary organizations, HI and Solidarité Internationale, that were volunteering to come on board with ACF to make it happen. And by doing this journey, we could share a precious tool with other organizations, and this other organization could contribute to its evolution and so on. And we faced some technical limitation, as always in IT. At some point, you have to make a major upgrade. And that's where, by being together, we were able to go and see donors. And, the French government, Carol, aside from me, is one of the leaders to fund the next step, is to say that we have a solution that could be expanded to the sector. We are facing some technical limitation. We need some funds to upgrade, but none of the organization using it have the fund. And that's what the donors have done. And so we are working right now on the link version 2 that will be open to the whole sector as soon as ready in the coming period. And so just to summarize based on this example is that every actor that is coming and joining, everyone gives and takes something. This is strength in number. And this is what we replicate in all of the activities that we run, is that there is always someone that is bringing something to start rolling the activities, and then the others bring, and the critical mass is reached out to make to transform the initiative to at scale. The next one is get your top management on board, and that's very important. We touched upon it on the previous session, but supply chain and logistics sector is connected directly to the key decision maker of the organization, the top level. That's absolutely critical. At the beginning, it was not the case, but step by step, organizations could have a logistician in their board and have this connection. To have the endorsement of the project by the top management is absolutely critical. This is where we had to clarify the relationship between organizations, and just to make sure that all the top managers are aligned on the fact that the relationship between organization can be a bit foggy at some point because we are working on the same with the same donors and working on the same appeals to get our funding. So we could have a kind of a bit of a competition, but on the other hand, we could demonstrate that there is a high value in working together. And so to be in this in this type of situation is not super comfortable. And so to advocate toward top management and to make them comfortable about it, we won't touch about the funding stream. We won't touch that. Let us work on the cooperation, because that's where we do create value, and that's where the joint initiatives or mutualization, even if it's not a real word, is creating value. That's very critical. And when it's endorsed by your top management, then they become the best sponsor and ambassadors, and they endorse the project, and they can mobilize everyone in the organization, because on the ULO, it's far going beyond logistic, the impact of ULO and what we are doing. It's mobilizing technical teams, it's mobilizing finance teams, and this without having the top management saying that ULO is a priority project for our organization, and please all join and support it from your sector. This would not have happened. So that's a critical point. And my last slide is open your initiative to others to scale up the impact. That's really we start small, 9 organizations. It was a critical mass enough to make it to put it in motion. But after this is really there is a snowball effect, attracting new partners, and you have to be ready and to anticipate the fact that you will have to onboard more partners. And that's also a key learning, to anticipate that, because today it's part of the challenge for ULO is to be able to absorb and integrate new actors. That's a key learning for ULO, and what we could maybe replicate in other sectors. Thank you.
Merci, thank you, Jean-Baptiste. So we heard about ULO as a shared services example of pooling resource, working better together, and we saw some of the key ingredients. Okay, now we would like to understand and hear different perspectives. How can we reapply that model across the sector? What will work or not work? Where is our targeted value when we can work better together? And then we have our different panelists that will share their perspective. Jean-François, CEO of ACF France, we'll go to you first. So ACF was a key player in building this shared resource vision. As we heard, you have also highly contributed with the link system toward the cooperative. So it was a bold step. It required collaboration mindset, trust, start a new model. So the question for you is, what are the prerequisites and the benefits that we can reapply that model across the aid sector?
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. There is 2 questions in this question, and so I would like to address the topic with 2 perspectives. I think we can look at ULO from the perspective from the business perspective in terms of logistic, but we also can look at what is ULO in terms of from a political perspective. And so we will probably get learnings from those 2 views in terms of the benefit, because the question is around the benefit. The first perspective for me is key, but is at the end of the day probably not the most important, probably not the most critical. It is the most important because it's the business perspective is the one under which we have to make to be efficient, to reduce the cost, to have a scale economy, and to be more efficient towards the beneficiaries and toward the population. And for sure, and it's easy to understand, and I think Jean-Baptiste and the ULO team would be much more positioned than me to precise that there is already better efficiency in terms of cost, in terms of managing the resources. This point is key for the organization themselves, but also is key for the donors, because what are the donors, they are looking for having cost efficiency in the euro given. And so they would prefer to give a euro which makes the difference into 10 people, more to give a euro that makes a difference to 5 people only. So from the business perspective, I think it's quite straightforward. I think it's quite obvious, and it's quite traditional that pooling resources, mutualization, even though it's a French word translated, badly translated in English, but the idea of working together, of cooperating together, reduce the cost and make the things more efficiency. By the way, it's key because we are supposed to save lives and to alleviate the suffering of people. So I think it's worth it trying to achieve our mandate, humanitarian mandate, by making it as less costly as possible. Also, because we are looking for money coming from donors. And this money is coming from citizens who are paying their taxes, etc., etc. And donors, they are not going to stop looking for increasing the performance of the euro, of the dollar given. So from the business perspective, I think there is already, and it's worth saying that after a year and a half, already success. I don't have the figures in mind. I know I saw the figures, but there is key percentages that shows that we are more efficient. But in the first way, in the first business way, there is also something which links us to the second way, which is the political one, and which concerns ACF concretely, because business means also equity. And so what Jean-Baptiste did not mention, it is that ACF decided to commit to, at the end of a period, as soon as we are absolutely certain that the future of Hulot is a success, I'm certain. But formally speaking, we have to be more certain, if you see what I mean. So in 2 years or 3 years' time, we will completely transfer the ownership of the software that we created to Hulot. What does it mean? From a business point of view, it means that this is a piece of equity for ICF, and equity is key for an organization. It is the value of our work, the value of the investment that we did over the last 10 years, several millions of euros. And so we are extremely relaxed to say, yes, at the end of the day, we will transfer this piece of equity to something which does not belong to us anymore, which is Hulot. So this is a step from a link between the business perspective to the political perspective. So because business-wise, I'm fine, and my board is fine to not get rid, but to transfer the asset to a new initiative, which is Hulot, which is a new business as well. It's a cooperative business, but it's a business for the sake of the people and following the principle, humanitarian principle. So why am I insisting on that? Because, and for me, this is the most critical aspect, it is the political will. We can't achieve that. We can't achieve reducing by X% the cost of logistical activities if at the beginning, not at the end of the day, at the beginning of the avenue, of the way, if there is no strong political will. And here, it is where the whole community is facing, without saying, one of the most important dilemma in our international humanitarian sector, because we are, and ACF as everybody else, we are very happy to say that, yeah, we want to transform the sector, we want to transfer our competencies, we want to localize our activities, we want, etc. We want to grand bargain everything, but we are not doing anything, are we? We are not doing anything concretely. And the donors, they are not in the good way for the moment, except by supporting Hulot to make things more simple in order the localization can exist, correct? But there is an exception, which is Hulot. And so this exception for me is based on a strong political will of 9 organizations at the beginning, and not only ACF at all, ACF among others. So I'm not making You know, I'm not saying that ICF is better than anybody else. Absolutely not. We are just one among 9, and now one among more than 9, I think. Yeah. How much is it? 7 and yeah. Anyway, we are one among others who really decided to jump in the cold water. Because if nobody is jumping in the cold water, nobody will know how cold is the water. And the water is not that cold. The water is not that cold. And interestingly, when you jump at 9 in the water gets warmer. You understand my image, of course, because it is the business aspect. So we need to have leaders. We are fine with that. We are fine with giving a part of their ownership, giving a part of their even political assets, equity, to something which will continue belonging to them, but a different way. Because to me, Hulot, in a way, continues to belong to ACF, as it belongs to Oxfam Intermon, as it belongs to the French Red Cross, as it belongs. You understand what I say when I'm using the word belonging. Yeah? So I'm not losing anything as the CEO of ACF, and ACF is not losing anything by transferring his equity. ACF is just, with the partners, concretely putting in place the nice words that we have all been saying for a couple of years. So we are just implementing the talks. We are just implementing the talks, and it's time to do so. It's time to do so. Otherwise, we won't be able to address the needs of the people. And it's time to do so because, for sure, it's not relevant only for logistics. We are probably all convinced, at least I am convinced, that it's going to be extremely relevant in addressing the climate and the environmental crisis. We are not going to address the environmental crisis ACF alone, NRC alone, sorry, Oxfam alone, etc., etc. We are going to be able to address that if we pool our competencies. And probably another field of development, it's in terms of HR. It's just my own feeling. But to make it in a nutshell, I'm sorry if I am long, I think we are not talking about the success of an initiative which is about pooling resources in logistics. Of course, we are talking about that, but we are not talking, if we limit the look at Hulot at that, we are missing the point. We are talking about something which can be a new model of activities. I like to have ACF brand super strong and super visible, but the people who are serving in Burkina, in Afghanistan, they don't pay attention to that, do they? No. They just pay attention to the people who is bringing support, correct? So whether it is ACF or another NGO, they don't care. The donor, they care a little bit, but not as much as we do. So I think it's fine to continue caring for our brand, but it's fine to continue caring for our brand, but also to transform the sector in something which is more mutualized, sorry again for the French word, for something which really better embodies the ideal, because at the end of the day, it's about transforming words into action. And I stop it here, I look at Hulot, of course, looking at the end line of result, because I'm in charge of the ACF working correctly, but I'm also looking at Hulot as certainly a model of the future of humanitarian activities.
Great. Thank you very much, Jean-François. Actually, very, very, very interesting. I'm sure you start having questions in the room. Write them down for the end. Online as well. If you have questions, you can start typing them in the chat. And we'll move now to Carole Bresson from the Crisis and Support Center in France, from the donor perspective now. From a strategic donor point of view, Carole, how do you see that model evolving, and what role will the donor play to support the resource pooling across the aid sector?
Thank you, Cécile, and thank you for inviting me. Well, I will try to give a donor perspective, and at least the French one, even if the The first point will be that, as you both said, we are facing a challenge to response to funding gap, and that's a challenge for donors. So it's a challenge for us in France, but it's also at the EU level. We're really working on finding solutions and try to guarantee a better effectiveness of humanitarian aid. And we think that pooling efforts is one of the answers. So that's why we think that putting in common and again mutualize is a nice way to first reduce costs, which is of course the first answer to try to reduce the gap between the growing needs and the fundings available, and also ensure the last mile delivery of aid, because if we work together, then we're making sure that it's more effective in going to the last mile delivery. And as you said to Jean-François, of course, reduce the environmental footprint is, of course, also a challenge. And as we know, logistics is a key element of humanitarian funding to meet those different challenges. That's why we decided to support HULO initiative, because we know that it's a key initiative to try to change the way we work and be more efficient in a collective approach. And as a donor perspective, we first had a discussion with you and then directly had a discussion with the Commission, with the European Union, to make sure that it wasn't France only, but at a bigger scale, the European Union. So we are 100% sure that is an objective that all donors share, because we are all also committed to the grand bargain too, and we're all trying to find solutions to implement those commitments. Looking at the growing needs, we as donors see maybe a time for a transformation of the sector, and it's necessary to meet those growing needs and to address this funding gap, maybe by pooling efforts, maybe by changing the way it works. And we as donor are, maybe it won't be very well received, but waiting also from you for your initiatives, for your innovations, for your solutions, because we are like, we know that on our side we need to pool more money. That's what we did as France now. Since 2018, we had various commitments to try to have a bigger and bigger budget to fund humanitarian aid. But once we have the money, how are we making sure that it's going to be more efficient? Because we see that the needs are growing. So, okay, let's put more money, but with that money, what are we doing better? And with this, we really want to try to work together. And what you said also, Jean-Baptiste, was a trustful environment. And that's also a key point with donors. Working with you, with HULO, is like the biggest part was also a trustful environment, because we were sure that the goal was to be more efficient, and that's a common goal that we have. So of course donors are going to support those initiatives because it's a win-win. We know that our budget, our money is going to be more effective, and you know that you're going to be more efficient and reach the beneficiaries and the needs in a better way. So, of course, we think that logistics is definitely not the only sector where we can do that. And I was just thinking of maybe 5 other ideas, and definitely it's really not the only 5s. But first one would be digitalization. It was mentioned by Cécile during the Humanitarian European Forum last month for data management and protection, transparency and accountability of aid. We know as donors that we are asking a lot for accountability and compliance. And so that's definitely a topic where I think there could be an interest to share resources to answer to the donors. And as donors, we're trying to work to ask the same thing, try to not complicate your work, but still we know that it's a lot of work, and we think that this could be something to share resources. Also for the assessment of needs in connection with logistical delivery capacities, meaning we are all working in this area. We are all working to reach those people. How is this going to happen? Is this possible? What are the specific needs in that very localized zone? Well, if there are various organizations working at the same zone, then yes, also the sharing assessments could be maybe useful and saving costs too. Then protection, both for information sharing and for NGO strategies for the protection of beneficiaries, but also for humanitarian staff, because this again is the same for all organizations. And as donor, we are asking the same thing for protection. I mean, it's protection activities are protection activities. It's just maybe we could consider that for a specific intervention, a specific project, a specific program where a few NGOs are working could be also shared. Another one is, as I said, reduction of the environmental footprint, and in particular, you said it, the waste management. We know that network exists, and from the history of ULO, we know that it's the way it starts, having people working together, but there's no structure existing. There's no, when we receive as donor a proposition for a project, there's no part of how are we dealing with this, with our environmental footprint, and we know that it's kind of it costs for the organization. So again, it could be you have your project and then you have a line where it's in consortium, because we're very much in favor of funding consortium. In consortium with that initiative that is about waste management. So we fund your project, including the waste management part of it, that could be held by an initiative similar as ULO, because we are also working on new requirements, because ECHO did it, and of course each time the commission is changing the way we work. Of course, as donor we need to do more or less the same, and this is something that we're working on. So definitely I think there is an interest on having a shared approach to that. So how are we going to answer to new requirements from donors? It has to be a common discussion and not working every organization on its side. And a final proposition would be on localization. Of course, you said it's on the grand bargain objective. We were trying to do our best as donor to do so. At the French Crisis Center, we do fund directly local NGO, but it's a big challenge. And we think that working together for the identification of partners and support them to have more local NGO identified by donors, because we know that when we fund big international NGOs, in the end, you are working with those partners, with those local partners. But could we find maybe a way to make sure that, okay, you have the trust, you trust this partner, so this other NGO can trust also this partner, and maybe after 2 or 3 funding by you, the donor could directly fund them, and you will have a role to play in the way to build those local hub or whatever it could look like. And I think this could work also, of course, to directly fund them, but also to have to make sure to associate national civil societies to the conception of the response in a collective way. And this would be, of course, very much welcomed by donors, because as I said, we are also trying to face the Grand Bargain commitment. And so we are also looking for solutions. So just to conclude, just for telling you, and at least for France, there is a huge interest in having a common initiative such as HULO. And I know that also with my European colleagues, we are also working on that. And each time we're working on the challenge of funding gap, one part of the answer is that mutualize and try to work together to try to reduce cost. And if it's not reduce cost only, is reduce cost to be more efficient and to reach the growing needs. Okay.
Thank you very much, Carol. Very interesting also. Okay, so we will move online now. Maria, so you started your camera. So Maria is the Professor of Humanitarian Logistics at the Kühne Logistic University in Hamburg, Director of Codes. So we'll switch Maria after having heard all the potential options from a donor perspective. Now we'll hear from the academic perspective. What are the key ingredients to scale up such model across the sector? To make more progresses toward the grand bargain? What could work from your academic point of view?
Thank you, Cecile, and thank you, everyone. Can you hear me clearly?
Yes.
Perfect. So what is the academic perspective on resource pooling? Since we have really heard a lot in this session about resource pooling and the different aspects of the stakeholders. And well, JB already showed the slide, so I'm going to quickly go through it. I think that it's not a secret, right? That we have all the discussions because of the funding gap. The needs keep increasing, but at the same time, the funding is increasing, but not so quickly, in order to make sure that the funding gap is decreasing. And what the different studies that JB also mentioned earlier have shown is that an important part when it comes to the disaster response of these total expenditures is actually related to the supply chain. And what we have found for different organizations, different disaster response, different type of operations, is that the average was 73%, which is actually really, really big. Now, JB has also gone very quickly through that, so let me go a little bit deeper into this. It was mentioned that if we try to remember some years ago, let's say back in 2000, there were not so many organizations that the logisticians, the supply chain people were actually having a role in the board. They had power when it comes to decision making. And since then, there have been many different activities that have helped humanitarian logistics to evolve. Some of these activities are very unfortunate activities, like big disasters. For example, the Asia tsunami back in 2004, even now with Ebola, that all these major shocks actually have been showing how important it is to make sure that we have a supply chain that is actually working and to minimize the disruptions that we have. Back in 2016, there was the first World Humanitarian Summit that took place, and there were actually lots of discussions also there about the importance that supply chains plays when it comes to the humanitarian aid sector. Since 2000, there have been also a lot of academic research on the topic. The publications have increased a lot. There have been different conferences that are trying to bring together practitioners and academics to really discuss about the importance of supply chain management and how it can help close the gap when it comes to the funding, but also to speed up the operations. Some of these are the African Logistics Conference or the Humanitarian and Health Supply Chain Conference. There have been many more and also better education opportunities for people to really understand better what humanitarian logistics is, so to raise awareness, but at the same time to support the sector to professionalize. And all of these have actually helping also the humanitarian organizations to make sure that they will have more decision makers that understand logistics to sit on the board. Of course, instrumental to this have been also different logistics policy, like the eco-logistics policy from last year. And definitely all of this could not have been achieved without collaboration. collaboration among the different stakeholders in the field, and different business models, different collaborative business models that have arisen. Now, why do we have all of this collaboration? Well, sorry, I couldn't change the slide. And of course, everybody has been talking a lot about efficiency, right? But let me change a little bit the definition of efficiency. Because for me, efficiency is not to have a low cost response. So efficiency is not to minimize the cost. Efficiency is to make sure that you use the budget in the best way, that you are not wasting resources, that there is no duplications, that we're learning from the mistakes, that we can accept that actually we will have an increased overhead because of the professional staff being trained, because of increasing the capacity of the local staff as well. So efficiency is not having the lower cost in such a way that actually we cannot achieve the best operations. Efficiency is to make sure that we're not wasting resources and that in the future we will actually need fewer resources. Of course, the second reason why all of us have been developing partnerships, have been engaged in collaboration with the humanitarian sector, is the effectiveness. So making sure that we do the right thing. And of course, as it has been mentioned before, in order to be able to do the right thing at the right time, to the right people, the right locations, but also in the right quantities of supplies, we need capacity. And we have an issue because it doesn't mean that there is always so much capacity in order to respond to all the different events that are happening globally. And that's where actually the collaborations in the humanitarian sector are coming in a very active way, because they can really help us making sure that we have enough capacity if many different organizations are coming together. So the motivation really for collaboration is first to try to see how we can use the limited resources that are available in a smart way. In this way, of course, we can also save resources, right? Because then we optimize things. We don't do the same mistakes that we were doing in the past. As different studies have shown, that increases a lot also the time savings that we're having. And back in the past that we did a study together with Action Against Hunger, what we found is that in some cases, it can really save days, even weeks, when people are working much more together. Now, there are two models when it comes to humanitarian logistics that in academic research, they are very well known. The first one that started back in 2006 was actually the UN logistics cluster. The more recent example that we have been discussing a lot in this session together, but also in the previous session in the morning, is HULO. But these models are working very differently, also when it comes to the governance. In the UN logistics cluster, there is much more freedom to commit. So when the disaster is happening, all the organizations that are active for the disaster response, they are invited to come in. Now, when it comes to HULO, the model is very different, right? Because what's happening here is that there are different organizations that they have the commitment, right? That they commit to participate. And in this way, of course, we can also have a higher integration of the strategy. But that means that there are two different models, right? So the UN Logistics Cluster is a model of more of an open governance, as we can call it, whereas HULO is a model that follows more the closed governance, as we also call it. And of course, we can have different models that are in between. Now, this means that we also have different trade-offs that arise. Of course, when there is a higher freedom of commitment, the organizations are not committing so much effort, so much time in order to collaborate, but at the same time, there is a higher risk of not getting things done in the way that you would like them to do. Now, when it comes to the second model, that is more about the closed governance, right? Then the risk is actually of integrating too much, of losing the identity, of going only for activities that save resources, right? That create more efficiency. And in some cases, there may be the push of avoiding activities that actually demand more resources. So when we see these models being more activated? The logistics cluster is more activated right now when it comes to ad hoc disaster response coordination, which means that there is the more short-term aspect of information exchange, but also the last resort. Whereas the HULO started more with the thinking about efficiency, how to avoid application, how to best use the resources, the common resources, and of course in the long term, to make sure that you can also do joint procurement, that there is this backbone of the IT systems. Now, what the literature is saying is that when it comes to any type of collaboration mechanism, we need 4 elements in order to make sure that this is successful. First of all, there needs to be trust. Trust among the organizations. And that's also something that Carol mentioned earlier. Trust also among the different stakeholders of the humanitarian area, to have very clear goals that everybody can understand, to have incentives that really prevent solitary behavior, and to have transparency, to show through the leaders actually how much can be gained through this collaboration, but at the same time be open about the challenges that the collaboration may bring at the beginning. So what the literature is also saying is what we need to study, where we need to put more focus, especially at the beginning of such initiatives. First of all, we need to understand better what can harm the trust in the transition phase between this ad hoc collaboration to being part for a longer term relationship. To make sure that the goals are clear for everyone, not only at the headquarters, that as JB mentioned earlier, there was from the beginning a more let me see how it was mentioned, a like-minded group of people, but also the field, right? Also the field realizes that, and there is no conflict with identity, that the incentives are clear, and also transparency and common leadership may be a little bit more difficult to implement in some cases when we have a more centralized organization. So when we have, and what I mean here is with this common, let's say, leadership. So before actually having any push for funding, there need to be more studies. There need to be more studies in order to see, to better understand which models, which business models of collaboration work better under different conditions. And these different conditions could be different disaster types, could be the conditions of the countries and the structure of the government, could depend on the humanitarian presence, so how many organizations are there, what kind of coordination mechanisms, what kind of structures, open or closed, are available, how can we really design the program best, and of course, what happens with the relationships with other stakeholders that we have. Now, there is lots of bibliography that I'm more than happy to share to everyone, but at this time, I would really like to stop the slides and leave more time also for questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Maria. Okay, so thank you to all the panelists. I mean, we have just a few things we have heard this morning that stick with me. You have been talking about the political will. First, you know, stop caring for a brand, but jumping, walk the talk. Somebody has to start somewhere, something. We have been hearing about the donor appetite also to have more of this solution, more of this initiative, you know, for efficiency, local impact, and very specific ideas, actually, we can take with us on resource pooling. And then we have heard very interesting, Maria, for you, you know, it's about using limited resource in a smart way to optimize outcome. And then the different model of governance, the 4 elements, and the extra study we need to increase impact. So JB, I will give you the closing words. So after everything we have heard today, what shall we do concretely to accelerate progress toward the grand bargain? In 3 points, please. No, I'm joking. No, but what inspired you and concretely what needs to happen now? I mean, the solution is with everyone here, but we have heard very concrete steps. So what are a few things you think should happen now to increase this model of resource sharing in the sector?
Very difficult question, and I'm not sure I'm very legitimate to answer to everything. But thank you to all the panelists. Really, it was really inspiring, and all what you say is really complementary. And I think you mentioned all the key ingredients to make it happen. And to me, now that we identified some possible activities that probably this ULO dynamic will trigger other ideas, other possibilities, that there is the donor willingness to support. And there is a clear end result that is to increase the impact of aid and to overcome the needs, the growing needs. I think, to me, I will be back to your point, Jean-François, which is the political willingness. I think right now all the conditions are there to be able to make it happen, but it has to be handled by the decision makers, the top managers of all the humanitarian sector, to make it happen. And maybe just to mention also the return on experience of ULO. All this would not have been without being able to reassemble all the CEOs of the founding members of ULO, and they themselves committed to it in working together around ULO. And that's really what's happening. We have regular meeting with all the CEOs coming and joining to follow up on the project, and that was a way to handle and to make happen this dynamic. And that triggers all along into all the organizations, because all the country directors are mobilized, all the middle management is also committed, and so on. To me, that's the only way. And also, why this happens that way is because I think we logisticians came with a solution. We came with a clear, concrete proposition, and this was really structured. And as CEOs or decision makers are spending their life at solving problems, when you come with a solution, I think that's making the things and all the meetings different, and all the meetings that we have done with the different CEOs to clearly ask their support, to mobilize them, and so on. It was always a very positive and enthusiastic meetings. Even it was a bit challenging and pushing us into our limits and so on. But it was really a key driver to make it happen. So that's, I think, the leadership and the political willingness is the next step to make it happen. Thank you.
Okay, so it's good because we have a good 20 minutes left. That was the idea, to start a dialogue, question, comments, it's a discussion. It's just the beginning. We are all in it together, the beginning of something new, of new ways of working. So online, I see questions are coming. Is there a question first in the room? Marie?
Thanks a lot. And also, I may be.
Oh, there is a mic.
Sorry, thank you very much. Marie, Interagency Procurement Group and Solidarity International. Maybe I'm very into it. I'm into pooling resources, joint procurement. It's a things I've done within SI, with RLH, and now with ULO. I'm really into it. And I'm just wondering that it's changing the mindset internally to the organization. And now they're thinking a lot about joint procurement and all that aspect. But there are limits. I don't want to be like saying, no, don't do it. But how can we make sure we're not losing energy trying to join procurement, to do joint procurement where it's not beneficial? And maybe it's a question from Maria. What could be the criteria and how can we trigger a healthy thinking around joint procurement, not trying at all stake, and what could be the limit to it? And is emergency, for example, is it linked to a specific context? Is it linked to a specific market? How can we be better efficient in choosing, in addition to the data, talking from themselves, but how can we do and have a sound and healthy decision-making process around that?
That is actually a very good question. Is it okay if I jump in first and then
Yes, go ahead,
maybe also the
Maria.
other
Yeah.
panelists can add in that, right? So, and of course, that's a question that I welcome, especially because I was talking a little bit about this, right? I think that what the data are showing so far is that, and now I don't talk only about, I don't talk about Hulu, right? I talk about different research that has happened on this topic. What data has been showing is that in some cases, the organizations are going so much for joint procurement because they see the benefits, right? Because they see that they can really save cost when they're doing things together. And then, of course, what they do is also that they make sure that they can buy all the quantities that they need to buy. But by doing that, then we get also in a mood that we feel that we should be engaging more into this joint procurement. And there may be the risk, and it has been the risk in the past for other cases, to really forget activities or not put so much attention on products that are still very important, but because they don't affect the whole organization. And with organization now, I mean the coordinated organization, right? Let's say the big organization like Hulu. If it doesn't affect all the different organizations that are part of the initiative, or if it affects only one of these organizations, at the end they may say, well, it's not efficient if we continue working on these products. And then the field may get the wrong message. They may stop engaging into something like that. And of course, that will really affect what the people in need are getting back. So there is this risk, and in order to make sure that we avoid it, right? First of all, there needs to be awareness. Nobody should be saying that we need to push, we need to be engaged, or we need to be procuring items only when it comes to joint procurement. Yes, we should have an open dialogue to understand with other partners which are the common items that we should be living on the joint procurement, but at the same time, which are the items that we should be following other processes, right? Maybe the past processes that we had. In some cases, we may still use the same suppliers, right? That because of the joint procurement, we may also increase the power that we have when it comes to bargaining, to negotiating better conditions with the suppliers. And you mentioned something, you said data. So what experience has shown is that it's difficult in some cases to collect the right data, right? Which means that at the beginning, we need to do a little bit of a try and error processes, right? To see how things are working, to use data from the past activities, and then also to try to fill the gap for modeling, as we have done when we started, for example, the 60-80 studies, before really going very deep into that. I don't know if I have answered your question, Mary, or? Perfect.
Maria to Marie. Yes, thank you, Maria. I'll jump to a question online. I think it's an interesting question because it's more of a broader question to what was discussed also this morning. From the partner point of view, not sure exactly who the partners are, but from the partner point of view, what are the limits or fears that you have regarding this new way of working together?
Okay, let me try. There are several barriers. Maybe the first one was the data sharing. The most obvious one, the biggest barrier was data sharing. To share data is, as I said before, really getting in the intimacy of the organizations, and so to jump that is also to really acknowledge the fact that I might be showing that I'm not super well managing my activities, and that's can be uncomfortable somehow, but we all know that we are not perfect. We all know that we are doing mistakes, and so that was the first barrier, just to really have this trustful environment, just to say, okay, we are not here to judge, we are here to find solution, and so that was one of the barrier. The other barrier that we have is maybe to have the right profile or the right mindset of the teams working together, and to make sure that we have a complementarity of skills, and we have and that's one of the limitation, or yeah, it can be difficult, and after more is no, is the political engagement. That's the most difficult to reach out, but we now worked on the methodology and of onboarding. When the logistic team is motivated, we can accompany and step by step make the growth internally to get the endorsement of the project and jumping it. Thank you.
Please.
If I may, one word from the more governance perspective. I think what was, because it's also based on ACF experience, what we discussed back in the years, it was how much control are we going to lose? How much independence are we going to lose? Because we all love kneeling in front of the word independence, you know, in terms of as an humanitarian organization. And so this is also why it's about political engagement and political understanding and will to understand that we are going to lose a little bit of control. Maybe I don't think that we are going to lose independence. We are going to run the activity with another way of control, with another type of control, because the structure described by Jean-Baptiste shows that each member has a seat within the organization at the Conseil de Surveillance. And so it's another type of control that you have to the activities. But I would add a last point on that. It is also what I said to the board of ACF. It is, are we sure that we want to have the control of the right things? Because we don't have to be in control of everything. I think there is areas of activities where the question of control is key, and where the question of control is less key, and it's fine to move, it's fine to evolve, and it's fine to accept that you can transfer. And once again, it's not giving up something, it is transferring something. And I don't know if the parallel would be good or not, but to me, there is a way in the private sector, corporate private sector, you know, where we see more and more companies becoming for purpose company. somehow maybe just to help to understand things. It's not strictly comparable, but I think maybe this way to become to come from a single unique NGO to sharing capacities and developing cooperative in some fields, it's has to be seen as the parallel to the path the corporate companies are engaging in terms of becoming for-purpose company. It's not strictly comparable, but in terms of ideas, we also have to change. We also have to change. And so, and once again, losing the control was at stake. And so far, I don't have the feeling that we are less controlling our supply chain activities or our activities.
Thank you. Definitely very interesting. I'll take another question from the room.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Got one, Maxence, logistic director from HI. And I think this question is probably directed to you, Jean-François. Looking at the title of the session, how sharing resources can support the grand bargain, I'm thinking we have developed a model for logistics through the ULO initiative. My question is, what do you think would be the next, what are we going to share next? I don't see it happening today in other shared services in finance and HR. I don't see it in the operation, but in some occasion we've done it in the emergency. And I'm just, I don't know. In fact, we are developing something. Now we can demonstrate the added values of sharing logistics. What's next?
Oh, thank you, Maxence. I think, and I like what you said, Caroline, because there is a lot of ideas, and it's very valuable to have a state, a donor, saying what you said, saying, I'm expecting you guys to come to us with innovations, initiatives. And for our side, if I may to take your words, we already see this area. So to come back to your question, Maxence, for me, the next first priority field to pool resources is about climate change and environment. It would be I will make it polite. I wouldn't understand, as we are at the beginning of the story, and as we all have a lot of effort in terms of knowledge, in terms of intelligence, in terms of money to start making the evaluation, assessing our individual carbon footprint, for example, not to pull that. It would be incomprehensible for me, ununderstandable for me, not to start sharing that. We started a little bit, but I think there is a big avenue on climate change and environment adaptation. Also, because at the end of the day, we won't make a substantial progress if we are not pooling our activities. So environment, I really liked, please allow me to take this from you, Carol. I really liked the compliance part because I think it's also linked to the grand bargain. And I also really liked the way to engage with local partners. Because if there is something where there is a big failure from Istanbul to today, it's the localization. Also because the rules are extremely complex. And so we all know that the colleagues, the local partners in Burkina, in Afghanistan, in Yemen, wherever it is, they can't comply with the asks and the demands and the requests and the requirements from donors. So maybe it's time to, I don't know how, but I think there is something there. Maybe for the local partners to be compliant with the donors, and also to make the donors understand that it's time also for them to share rules, because let's make it simple. Huh? It's all the rules are different. Most of the rules are different. We would have a common base of rules of compliance shared by asked by all donors to all actors. It will be a big step further to implement the grand bargain. So environment, compliance, and engaging local partners.
Thank you. Very clear. Bassam?
Yeah. So there's a lot of discussion around. I don't know.
It's switched on, or?
It's on.
It's green. Yeah.
Ça marche? Hello? That's okay. I don't need it. So,
The online
maybe use this mic.
This one.
Yeah.
All right. It's more of a comment than a question and an observation. So there's a lot of talk about, do we lose control with Hulo? Do we not lose control? I think we need to look at it a little bit differently. So we are all the NGOs, we are all different NGOs. We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses, we fill in a gap, we meet a need. We all have a role to play within our sector, right? We all have our individual cultures, just like Maria's sort of slide between open governance and closed governance. We all have our identity. We meet different types of beneficiaries. We have different types of competencies. And our jobs as supply chain leaders within our organizations is to enable the organization to achieve its goals, to achieve its objectives. That's the role of the CEO to do for ACF, right? If the work with Hulo enables us to achieve more, then the work of Hulo adds value to our organizations. If it doesn't, then you shouldn't engage with it. If it detracts from your ability to achieve your goals, you shouldn't engage with it. The way I see it is Hulo has much more added value in many ways than it doesn't. And in the ways that it does, I will be engaging with Hulo and I will be pushing that because it adds value to my organization's ability to do its work. Where it doesn't, obviously, I will not. And I don't believe that the Hulo structure forces anyone to do something where it doesn't add value for you. It's a choice. If you see there's value, good. In some countries, maybe there's value in doing joint procurement. Maybe there isn't. If there isn't, I'm not going to force it on the country offices. They are well suited enough to understand their local needs, their local markets, to say, well, this is good for me, I will join, and this is not good for me, I will not join. So I think it's very important to sort of keep that that highlight. The way I see it also is that we a lot have many strengths. A lot of us also has many weaknesses. I know NRC, the Norwegian Refugee Council, has many weaknesses. One of the key benefits of Hulo is this knowledge sharing, which is taking somebody's strength and seeing how they solve the problem and taking it into my organization and helping my organization be better as a result. And the opposite is also true, where I will like to share what I'm doing good, what I feel I'm doing good at least, with others who aren't probably doing good and allowing them to learn from it. That's the added value of working together, is that we don't, the cart will never push the horse. The needs always have to drive how an organization works. And the key part here, and I'm sorry if I'm going too long, but the key part here is Hulo fills in a gap that exists in the humanitarian sector today. If you look at the logistics cluster, it's mainly focused on emergency response. If you look at the IAPG, it's focused on procurement. If you look at the fleet forum, it's focused on fleet. Everything else, which is quite large, nobody's doing it, right? So if we want to come up with a solution that, for example, data sharing, right? We all want to share data. Where would this data sit? How will this data exist? Who will develop the dashboard? Who will support the IT infrastructure? You need a body to where these things can live and can continue to persist and grow so that they can serve the community. If we cannot pay for it, if we cannot let this exist, it will die and nobody will benefit from it. And then this is where Hulo, I believe, Hulo brings in an added value. So yeah, I just wanted to make that really clear, is that Hulo enables us to do more. They don't do the opposite. That's how I see it anyway.
Thank you, Bassam. I think we should maybe hire you to do some pitch or. No, that was very well said, actually. And it's nice to hear from partner organization as well, the perspective on where it adds value you join, right? Or it's what's in it for me, I guess, right? Okay, so I'll send in the chat box. It's a question, but I guess I will leave it as a comment. Logistic was dropped from the grand bargain, despite being part of the original commitment. Is it time to reintroduce logistic under the grand bargain? Is there a will from the sector to push and work on this under the grand bargain framework? So I'm not sure we'll fix this one here together today. You want to fix it, Marie? Absolutely. Mm. Yes, and I think it's also part of closing the funding gap, which has been discussed for years. Logistic supply chain as a whole has not been mentioned a lot. There is also something to consider there. So I thank you very much for your attention, for your time. I know it's lunch, so I wish you a good lunch. We're still around, and thank you also for the panel. That was super interesting to hear a very different perspective, and thank you for coming today. Thank you, Maria, for being online. Still available for question. We'll stay in the room a few more minutes, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Cecile. Thank you, JP. Thank you, everyone.
Bon appétit, Maria. Talk to you soon.